Tonight, on First at 9 this Thursday, the 29th of May 2025. Behind bars, ex-Minister Mahindananda Alutgamage sentenced to 20 years of rigorous imprisonment. Nalin Fernando sentenced to 25 years of rigorous imprisonment. Former Minister Duminda Disanayaka further remanded. Take action. CID complaint filed demanding an investigation into the controversial release of 323 containers. Calls for legal action against related political statements if they are proved untrue. Committee already appointed to investigate the case, says Sri Lanka Customs. Not again. Sri Lanka ramps up PCR testing following a rise in COVID-19 cases across the Asian region, says the Health Ministry Secretary.
Cinec Campus Open Day. May masa 3 වෙනි දින උදෑසන 9 සිට Cinec Campus පරිශ්‍රයේදී.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Derana First at 9. I'm Aditya Drisingha joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Brought to you by the only Sri Lankan media network to rise to the pinnacle across all media platforms. Recognized as the best by every survey and beloved by the people. Now on your top story tonight, the Colombo Permanent High Court trial at bar sentenced former Sports Minister Mahindananda Alutgamage to 20 years of rigorous imprisonment, while former Trade Minister Nalin Fernando was handed a 25-year sentence of rigorous imprisonment by the same trial at bar today. The two former ministers were found guilty in a corruption case related to the import of sports equipment in 2015, which resulted in a whopping 53.1 million rupee loss to the government.
The Commission to investigate allegations of bribery or corruption filed charges against the former Minister of Sports, Mahindananda Alutgamage, and the former Minister of Trade and ex-chairman of Lanka Satosa, Nalin Fernando, accusing them of causing a 53.1 million rupee loss to the government. According to the Bribery Commission, the loss was caused when the two ministers sanctioned the import of 14,000 carom boards and 11,000 checkerboards via Lanka Satosa for distribution to sports clubs in the lead up to the 2015 presidential election. The Bribery Commission filed charges before the Colombo Permanent High Court trial at bar. The Commission filed 6 charges against the suspects and filed indictments in 2016 under the offence of corruption pursuant to Section 70 of the Bribery Act No. 20 of 1994. Assistant Director of the Bribery Commission, Attorney at Law Anuttara Jayasinghe, led the prosecution along with Attorney at Law Tushari Jayaratna. Meanwhile, WAN Vikramasinghe served as the investigating officer in the matter. Presiding Judge Mahesh Veeraman, who announced the verdict on behalf of the 3-member bench of High Court, stated that the bench unanimously decided to convict the defendants as the prosecution had succeeded in proving the charges against them. President's Counsel Anil Silva, appearing on behalf of former Minister Nalin Fernando, submitted that his client only opened letters of credit related to this transaction and so urged the court to consider a more lenient sentence. Meanwhile, President's Counsel Shanaka Ranasinghe, appearing on behalf of former Minister Mahindananda Alutgamage, drew attention to the lack of evidence to suggest that the former Minister Alutgamage benefited from the import of sports equipment. Citing the lack of evidence, President's Counsel Shanaka Ranasinghe too urged the court to consider a more lenient sentence for his client, former Minister Mahindananda Alutgamage. Appearing for the Bribery Commission, Assistant Director, Attorney at Law Anuttara Jayasinghe submitted in court that the former ministers have misused their power and that they have caused a significant financial loss to the government and the public. Considering the pleadings made by all relative parties, the Colombo Permanent High Court trial at bar sentenced former Minister Mahindananda Alutgamage to 20 years rigorous imprisonment, while former Minister Nalin Fernando was passed a sentence of 25 years rigorous imprisonment. Additionally, the Colombo Permanent High Court trial at bar imposed separate fines on both former ministers. Accordingly, 200,000 rupees were charged against Mahindananda Alutgamage, while 400,000 rupees were charged against Nalin Fernando. Soon after the verdict was announced, the two ministers were detained at the Colombo Chief Magistrates Court premises. They were subsequently transported to the Velikada prison.
Meanwhile, former Minister Duminda Dissanayake and the three other suspects who were arrested in connection to the discovery of a gold-plated T-56 firearm in Havelock City were produced before the Mount Lavinia Magistrates Court today. Although the attorneys at law had moved the court for bail, the Mount Lavinia magistrate refused to grant bail after considering the fact that the investigation into the firearm had not been completed and the possibility of obstruction to the investigation. Afterwards, the suspects, including former Minister Dissanayake, were ordered to be held in remand custody until the 5th of June. The Committee of Inquiry to investigate and report its findings on acts of gross abuse of power allegedly committed by suspended Inspector General of Police Deshabandhu Tennakon convened at the Parliamentary complex today. According to the Parliamentary Communications Department, several admissions were agreed upon by both the Attorney General's Department and respondent IGP Tennakon. Representing the Attorney General's Department, Additional Solicitor General, President's Counsel Dileepa Piris, and Deputy Solicitor General Rajitha Pereira, who attended the meeting, presented several admissions that could be agreed upon by both parties regarding the allegations made against the respondent IGP Deshabandhu Tennakon. Accordingly, a basic consensus was reached between the parties on the matters that did not require clarification. The committee is set to convene again at 2 p.m. on the 3rd of June to present affidavits regarding the evidence submitted. Now in other law and order related updates, a complaint was lodged with the Criminal Investigation Department today over the controversial release of 323 containers off the hands of Sri Lanka Customs earlier in January this year. The complaint, which comes hot off the heels of opposition outrage, calls for a thorough investigation into the statements made by politicians regarding the release of these containers. Meanwhile, responding to a question regarding the incident, the Director of Sri Lanka Customs, PBSC Noni, states that the incident is currently being probed by a committee set up by the Treasury Secretary.
Attempt at covering up information pertaining to the arbitrary release of 323 containers off the hands of the Sri Lanka Customs. The containers were released earlier in January this year, purportedly under the orders of Minister of Transport, Highways, Ports and Civil Aviation Bimal Ratnayaka. Off the back of these developments, former MP Udaya Mampila and MP Dayasiri Jayasekara issued public statements claiming that the surge in organised crime and gun violence are a direct result of the uninspected release of these containers. They alleged that the containers in question could have contained in them narcotics and weapons. Drawing attention to these concerns raised by MP Jayasekara and former MP Gammampila, Attorney at Law Nalin Sampath Kumara lodged a complaint with the Criminal Investigation Department today. The complainant claims that statements made by MP Jayasekara and former MP Gammampila must be investigated. The complainant further claims that necessary measures must be taken against them if the allegations are false. Addressing a press briefing, former MP Udaya Mampila commented on these developments today.
Container පිළිබඳ මම තොරතුරු දැනගැනීමේ පනත යටතේ ප්‍රශ්න ටිකක් අහලා යවනවා.
Under the Right to Information Act, I asked several questions regarding the containers released from the custody of Sri Lanka Customs. Sri Lanka Customs replied to me saying that the Customs does not have the documents that contain the information I require. When we inquired the authorities about the contents of the released containers, however, Sri Lanka Customs and the government are unable to provide answers. First of all, a port congestion was created conspiratorially on January 18th. The congestion does not exist anymore. Minister Bimal Ratnayaka then ordered the customs to release these containers without any legal right to do so whatsoever. Afterwards, shooting surged across island. We connected the dots and expressed our doubts. Now, who should be questioned about this matter? Minister Bimal Ratnayaka illegally released these containers.
Bimal Ratnayaka ඇමතුමාගෙන්.
Amid allegations, the director of Sri Lanka Customs, PBSC Nonis, claims that a probe into the matter is currently underway.
මේ සම්බන්ධයෙන් මම හිතනවා අපි
I am unable to comment on the matter at the moment. I am unable to do so since there is a formal investigation underway by a committee appointed by the Secretary of the Treasury. Reports regarding the 323 containers released and the measures that were taken by the relevant individuals have been provided to this committee. I also provided a statement to the committee as well. The report of the committee will be released soon and it will include all the relevant details.
තාවේ ওই සියලුම කරුණු තියෙනවා.
Now, several post offices across the island remained closed today as the strike action launched by the Postal and Telecommunications Officers Union, initiated yesterday, continued on. Meanwhile, the Ceylon Bank Employees Union and the Association of Civil Aviation Employees also launched union action in protest against issues concerning their allowances.
The Postal and Telecommunication Officers Union launched a two-day strike action yesterday at 4 p.m, withdrawing from duties at the Central Mail Exchange. The strike action commenced based on 15 demands, including the reluctance to fill existing vacancies. In addition to the strike action, a protest was conducted today in front of the Central Mail Exchange. The Postal and Telecommunication Officers Union stated that the strike action would commence at the remaining post offices across the country from midnight yesterday. Accordingly, post offices in several areas in the country were closed today. Meanwhile, tensions arose between the police and central postal workers who reported to work today at the Battaramulla post office despite the strike action. Two police officers attached to the traffic division fined the workers for parking their vehicles in a manner that disrupted traffic. Additionally, postal workers who reported to work at the Horana post office were seen waiting outside the premises since the post office was closed. However, some post offices were seen open to business today. Meanwhile, the Postmaster General commented on the ongoing strike actions.
There are 34 trade unions. The Postal and Telecommunication Officers Union is one of them. They are behind this trade union action. The rest of the officers will report to duty. There are over 3,400 sub-post offices and all of them are open and operational today.
Meanwhile, the Ceylon Bank Employees Union withdrew from duties in protest of the curtailment of bonus allowances. Accordingly, a strike action was launched at 12:30 p.m. today, shutting down all branches of the Bank of Ceylon. The union announced that they will be launching a token strike on the 6th of June if their demands are not met. In the meantime, the Association of Civil Aviation Employees also commenced a trade union action from midnight yesterday over issues related to their overtime allowances. The Association of Civil Aviation Employees stated that all their members have withdrawn from overtime work. The association went on to say that they would continue the union action until their issues are resolved.
සිනෙක් කැම්පස් ඕපන් ඩේ මැයි මස 3 වැනි දින උදෑසන 9 සිට සිනෙක් කැම්පස් පරිශ්‍රයේදී
President Anrukumara Dissanayake convened a meeting with chairpersons of district coordination committees and senior officials of the Ministry of Finance at the Presidential Secretariat this morning to gather proposals and ideas for Budget 2026. During the meeting, President Dissanayake emphasized the importance of prioritizing the basic and urgent needs of the people at the district level while preparing the upcoming budget. The dialogue focused on identifying essential infrastructure requirements and other critical development needs and ensuring their implementation through the forthcoming budget allocations. Extensive discussions were held on the development projects currently underway across various districts in the country. Chinese Finance Minister Wang Wentao met President Anrukumara Dissanayake today at the Presidential Secretariat. The minister stated that Chinese investors are more interested in investing in Sri Lanka in view of current political and economic stability in Sri Lanka. He added that this visit with more than 100 investors will further strengthen economic cooperation between the two countries. Discussions were held on working together to achieve trade and economic goals in a way that benefits both countries in a challenging time, and the Chinese Minister of Commerce further stated that China is committed to providing necessary support to Sri Lanka in the face of global economic instability. Discussions were also held on the expeditious completion of development projects currently underway in Sri Lanka with the support of the Chinese government and the expeditious implementation of planned projects. Meanwhile, Polish Foreign Minister Radoslaw Sikorski, currently on an official visit to Sri Lanka, also met President Anura Dissanayake at the Presidential Secretariat this afternoon. The two sides held extensive discussions on strengthening cooperation between Sri Lanka and the European Union. President Dissanayake emphasized that EU support is vital to help Sri Lanka navigate future global economic challenges. He also expressed interest in expanding collaboration with the EU, especially in light of new tariff regime imposed by the United States. The president welcomed the EU's positive stance on extending the GSP Plus trade concession, calling it a crucial boost for Sri Lanka's economy. Minister Sikorski noted that his visit reflects the EU's and Poland's growing interest in Sri Lanka, signaling a potential deepening of bilateral and regional ties. Now in other local news, Secretary to the Ministry of Health, Dr. Anil Jathinga, states that PCR testing will be increased across the country to assess whether the new COVID-19 variant is spreading locally. Speaking at a press conference held yesterday, he emphasized that while there is no immediate cause for public concern, the possibility of the new variant entering the country cannot be ruled out.
The World Health Organization has issued a warning regarding the resurgence of COVID-19 across several parts of Asia, attributed to the emergence of new virus variants. While the overall global public health risk remains low, countries such as India, Singapore, China and Thailand have reported a noticeable increase in cases. In India, the state of Kerala has seen a rise in mild infections. However, there has been no significant increase in hospitalizations. Variants such as JN.1, LF.7 and NB.1.8.1 are currently being reported in multiple countries. Of these, LF.1 and NB.1.8.1 are considered variants under monitoring by the WHO. In response, the Ministry of Health has drawn attention to the emerging situation and is taking precautionary measures to address the potential risk posed by these new COVID-19 variants.
We held a meeting yesterday involving the epidemiology unit and all relevant health sector stakeholders. At present, there is no cause for panic. However, that does not mean these variants cannot reach Sri Lanka. The current spike in COVID-19 cases is being observed in Asia. The number of PCR tests will be increased, particularly at the Medical Research Institute, the National Hospital in Kandy and 2 national hospitals in Galle, and at other teaching hospitals with the required facilities. We already have a surveillance system in place for flu cases, both for outpatient and inpatient cases. We are now strengthening the surveillance to better detect if COVID-19 is spreading locally and whether any of the new variants have reached Sri Lanka.
ඔබට උනේ හෙම්බිරිස්සාව හැදුනොත් ඔබ මාස්ක් එකක් පාවිච්චි කරන්න ඒක අනිත් අයට හොඳයි.
Environmental cleanliness is key. We have identified a significant number of mosquito breeding sites and issued many red notices. However, government efforts alone are not enough. Public participation is crucial in controlling the spread of dengue.
Now, a leader of the United National Party, former President Ranil Wickremesinghe, states that a committee has been appointed to build a new United National Party based on the results of the recently held local government elections. While addressing the swearing-in of local government councillors elected from the UNP, the former president asserts that a new agenda is needed and not merely a number of new faces.
The swearing-in of local government councillors elected from the United National Party was held this morning at UNP's Sirikotha Party headquarters under the patronage of party leader, former President Ranil Wickremesinghe.
All opposition parties are currently holding discussions to consolidate power in local government councils through alliances where possible. In other local government councils, those parties will operate as the opposition. Many new faces have entered the fray this time. Individuals who are experienced and familiar to us were rejected during the parliamentary elections. Complete beginners were voted in. They are not veteran politicians yet. This is the situation across all political parties. New faces aren't enough. We also need new agendas. I did not inspire the surge in votes claimed by our party at the recently held local government polls. I handed over that responsibility to the committee. The committee led the effort to increase our vote tally. Our national organizer, General Secretary, Chairman, Deputy Leaders, Harin Fernando, Rajitha Senaratne and Manushana Nayakara were given those responsibilities. They divided the responsibilities among themselves and executed them. We can debate on whether what they did was right or wrong. However, we secured our result. I wanted to hand over those responsibilities to others. We have to build a party off the back of these results. I won't be doing that too. I will hand over that responsibility to the same committee. We must set a deadline to see if it can be achieved. And to do so, we must push more new faces into the forefront. We have new faces here. People expect a new party. We did that in 1956, 1977 and in 1994 for the election in 2001. We should follow those footsteps. We do all this to emerge as the most popular party once more. This is just the beginning.
Now, the Department of Immigration and Immigration announced the conclusion of round-the-clock issuance of one-day service passports effective from tomorrow. Accordingly, the 24-hour service, which was implemented from February 18th as a solution to control the long queues formed earlier this year, will conclude on May 30th, 2025. Furthermore, the department stated that applicants who have already reserved a date under the one-day service, as well as those with urgent or priority needs, may submit their applications on Monday, the 2nd of June between 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Immigration and Immigration Department's head office in Battaramulla. Additionally, the general service applications at the head office will also be accepted from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. Regional officers will continue to accept both regular and one-day service applications from 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. as usual. Welcome back. Now in your business news, the second round of tariff negotiation discussions between Sri Lanka and the representatives of the Office of the United States Trade Representative regarding obtaining U.S. tariff concessions began yesterday in the United States. Meanwhile, the United States Court of International Trade has decided to block the implementation of the reciprocal tariffs introduced by the U.S. President.
On April 2, 2025, US President Donald Trump implemented reciprocal tariffs on foreign countries with trade surpluses against the US. This included tariffs of over 10% on various nations, with Sri Lanka facing an especially steep 44% tariff on its imports to the United States. However, the Court of International Trade in Manhattan ruled that President Trump had overstepped his authority by invoking the 1977 Federal Economic Emergencies Act. The court determined that Trump had misused the act, effectively blocking the tariffs from being enforced. The court had given this ruling while announcing the decisions in two cases filed by a consortium of businessmen and government officials. In response, the White House announced its intention to appeal, asserting that decisions regarding national emergencies should rest with elected officials, not judges. The ruling had immediate global economic effects as the stock markets in the US, Europe, and Asia surged, while the value of US dollar strengthened significantly. Meanwhile, a second round of tariff negotiations between the US and Sri Lanka has begun. The Sri Lankan delegation is currently in Washington, D.C. to commence the second round of trade talks, which come off the back of a round of negotiations held earlier in April. The Sri Lankan delegation include Deputy Minister of Finance Dr. Harshana Surya Peruma, Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Weerasinghe, Sri Lankan Ambassador Mahinda Samarasinghe, and Presidential Advisor Duminda Hulangamua.
Now in other business news, market turnover crossed 6 billion rupees today, while the Colombo Stock Exchange closed in positive territory as a result of price gains in counters such as LLC Finance, Ceylon Cold Stores and John Keel's Holdings. The benchmark all-share price index closed 0.61% higher at 16,815.60 points, while the more liquid S&P Sri Lanka 20 gained 0.91% to close at 4,963.27. Market turnover was 6.42 billion rupees. The banking sector emerged as the highest contributor to market turnover, followed by the capital goods sector. Foreign participation in market activity remained at subdued levels, with foreigners closing as net sellers of loading shares worth 312 million rupees. And now here's a look at today's exchange rates. That's all the news we have for you tonight. Thank you. Have a great night.